The stars were bright that night when everything changed. Dr. Michael Torres sat in his small office at the observatory in New Mexico, drinking cold coffee and watching data scroll across his screen. It was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday evening. He was tracking what he thought was a new asteroid cluster, moving through the outer solar system. Then the readings changed. The objects were slowing down. Asteroids did not slow down. Michael's hands shook as he ran the calculations again. These were not rocks. These were ships. He grabbed his phone and called his supervisor. Before he could speak, alarms began ringing across every major space monitoring station on Earth. The objects had just appeared past Neptune, dozens of them, each one larger than an aircraft carrier. They were coming toward Earth, and they were coming fast. Commander Vektal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Fang, and studied the blue planet on his screen. This was his 17th conquest. He had burned cities on 16 different worlds. He had seen countless species kneel before the might of the Zek-Thor Dominion. This small planet with its primitive technology would be no different. The humans had sent signals into space for over a century, radio waves carrying their music, their messages, their locations. They had announced themselves to the galaxy like children shouting in a dark forest. The Zek-Thor had been listening. They knew everything about Earth. Its weapons were crude. Its people were divided. Its defenses were laughable. Vektal clicked his mandibles together, a gesture of satisfaction among his kind. His gray skin seemed to shimmer under the red lights of the command center. His forearms moved across control panels with practiced ease. He had done this so many times before. First, they would destroy military capabilities. Then they would broadcast their terms: surrender or die. Most species chose surrender. The ones that did not choose quickly regretted their choice. He gave the order. The fleet moved forward. On Earth, panic spread like wildfire. Every government received the same message simultaneously. It came in every language, broadcast on every frequency. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated by alien computers into words humans could understand. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Zek-Thor Dominion. Your weapons are useless. Your resistance is futile. Surrender your governments within 12 hours or face extermination. Those who submit will be spared. Those who fight will watch their cities burn. There was no time to prepare, no time to negotiate, no time to unite. The attack began exactly 12 hours and 1 minute after the message ended. The first city to fall was Tokyo. 3 massive ships descended through the clouds, their hulls dark as midnight. They did not target military bases. They targeted the city center where millions of people lived and worked. Beams of purple light shot down from the ships, and where they touched, buildings exploded. Stone and steel melted like wax. The heat was so intense that glass turned to vapor. People ran through the streets screaming, trying to escape the destruction raining from above. Some made it to shelters. Most did not. In 15 minutes, the heart of Tokyo was gone, replaced by a crater of molten rock that glowed red in the darkness. New York was next, then London, then Moscow, then Mumbai. The Zek-Thor fleet split into groups and struck every continent simultaneously. They moved with efficiency born from experience. They knew exactly how to break a planet's will, show overwhelming force, destroy symbols of power, make the people feel helpless. Earth's militaries tried to fight back. Fighter jets scrambled from bases around the world. Missiles launched from ships and submarines. Every weapon humanity had built was thrown at the invaders. For a moment there was hope. Some missiles hit their targets. Some alien ships showed damage. Then the Zek-Thor deployed their drones. Thousands of small aircraft poured from the larger ships like angry insects from a disturbed nest. They were fast and heavily armed. Earth's fighters did not stand a chance. The sky filled with explosions and falling debris. Within hours, most of Earth's air forces were destroyed. Commander Vektal watched the reports coming in and nodded with approval. Everything was proceeding as expected. Human casualties were in the millions already. Their major cities were in ruins. Their militaries were broken. By his calculations, formal surrender would come within 3 days. The humans would have no choice, but in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, something else was happening. General Sarah Hayes stood before a group of military leaders from a dozen countries. The room smelled of sweat and fear. Outside, the world was burning. In here, they needed to make a choice. "We cannot beat them in open combat," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They have better weapons, better ships, better technology. If we keep fighting the way we have been, we will lose. A Chinese general spoke up. Then you suggest surrender? Sarah's eyes were hard as stone. No, I suggest we change how we fight. She pulled up images on the screen behind her. They showed Zekthor troops patrolling destroyed cities. They showed the alien supply lines stretching from their ships to the ground. They showed patterns in their attack strategies. They think like conquerors, Sarah continued. They expect us to fight like soldiers, to follow rules, to eventually give up when the cost becomes too high. But we are not going to do that. We are going to fight like something they have never encountered before. We are going to make them regret ever coming here. Around the world, the message spread through encrypted channels, to every surviving military unit, to police forces, to armed civilians, to anyone who would listen. Do not surrender. Go underground. Hide your weapons. Watch the enemy. Learn their patterns. Wait for the moment to strike. The Zekthor began their occupation. They landed troops in every major city they had not completely destroyed. Shock troops marched through streets, their armor thick and their weapons powerful. They began setting up control centers and announcing rules for the surviving humans. Curfews were established. Gatherings were forbidden. Weapons were to be surrendered immediately. Most people obeyed because they had no choice. They were terrified and broken. They had watched their world end in a single day. But among the crowds of frightened citizens, others watched with different eyes. They memorized the aliens' routines. They noted when guards changed shifts. They observed which buildings the invaders used for storage. In Seoul, a young engineer named Jin Park hid in the ruins of his university. Around him lay the bodies of his students and colleagues. He had not slept in 30 hours. His hands were covered in blood and ash. But in those hands he held something precious, a piece of alien technology, torn from a destroyed drone. It was still functioning, its circuits visible through the cracked casing. Jin stared at it and began to smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had lost everything and now had nothing left to lose. He pulled out his tools and began to work. Across the planet, millions of others were making the same choice. The Zekthor had brought hell to Earth. They had killed billions and broken nations. They expected the survivors to bow and accept their fate. They did not understand humans at all. Commander Vektal sent his report to the Dominion Council. Earth conquest proceeding smoothly. Resistance minimal. Occupation phase beginning. Full control expected within one planetary rotation. He had no idea how wrong he was. 3 months had passed since the invasion began, and Commander Vektal felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. Doubt. He stood in his command center reviewing reports that made no sense. Supply Convoy 7 had disappeared 2 days ago. No distress signal, no wreckage found, just gone. It was the 4th convoy to vanish this month. Outpost 12 stopped responding yesterday. When troops arrived to investigate, they found the facility empty except for strange markings on the walls written in human blood. The markings were coordinates. Coordinates to Zekthor homeworld. Vektal's mandibles clicked nervously. This was not how conquered species behaved. They were supposed to be broken by now, accepting their fate, working in labor camps, too afraid to resist. Instead, resistance attacks were increasing every week. The humans were not giving up. They were getting better. In the ruins of London, a woman named Emma Price crouched in the darkness of an abandoned subway tunnel. She was once a school teacher. Now she led a cell of 40 resistance fighters. Around her, people checked their weapons with quiet efficiency. These were not military weapons anymore. These were Zekthor plasma rifles, taken from dead aliens and modified to fit human hands. Emma looked at the young man beside her. His name was David, barely 20 years old. 3 months ago, he was studying computer science. Now he was their tech expert, the one who figured out how to hack Zekthor communication systems. The patrol will pass the junction in 5 minutes, David whispered, checking the alien device in his hands. Same route they always take. Same number of troops, Emma nodded. The Zekthor were efficient and organized. That was their weakness. They followed patterns. They did the same things the same way because it had worked on 16 other worlds. But humans were learning those patterns, memorizing them, using them as traps. The Zekthor patrol appeared exactly on schedule. 6 soldiers in heavy armor, moving in formation, their weapons ready. They had made this patrol every night for 3 months without incident. They were confident, perhaps even bored. They did not see the thin wire stretched across their path until one of them tripped it. The explosion came from above, not below. Debris from the tunnel ceiling collapsed on them, followed by a second explosion that turned the tunnel into a kill zone. Emma's team opened fire from concealed positions, targeting the joints in the alien armor where it was weakest. It was over in seconds. 6 aliens dead, 0 human casualties. Emma's team moved fast, stripping the bodies of weapons, ammunition, and equipment. Then they vanished into the tunnels before reinforcements could arrive. The entire operation took less than 3 minutes. This was happening in every occupied city. The humans were adapting, learning, becoming more dangerous every day. On the other side of the world, in what used to be Los Angeles, Jin Park worked in a secret underground laboratory. He was no longer alone. Around him, dozens of scientists and engineers from different countries worked on tables covered with alien technology. They had power from stolen generators. They had tools salvaged from the ruins. Most importantly, they had captured Zekthor equipment to study. Jin held up a modified plasma rifle. It looked crude compared to the original, but it worked better. Human hands could now fire it without the massive recoil breaking their arms. The power cell lasted twice as long because they had figured out how to optimize the energy flow. They had reverse-engineered in weeks what should have taken years. "We are ready for the next phase," Jin announced to the room. "We can produce 50 units per week now." An Indian scientist named Priya looked up from her work. She was studying Zekthor biology, dissecting one of the aliens they had killed and preserved. "I have something better," she said. "Their respiratory system has a weakness. They breathe a slightly different atmospheric mixture than us. I can create a gas that will be harmless to humans but lethal to them." Around the room, tired faces began to show something they had not felt in months. Hope mixed with anger. A dangerous combination. But the humans were not just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with information. In a server room hidden beneath the ruins of Berlin, a group called themselves the Ghosts worked on computers powered by solar panels and stolen alien batteries. They were hackers, programmers, and communications experts. Their leader was a woman named Yuki, who used to work in cybersecurity. Now she worked on breaking into Zekthor systems. It took them 2 months, but they finally cracked the alien encryption. Suddenly, they could see everything. Troop movements, supply schedules, command communications. The Zekthor had never encountered a species with such advanced computer skills. They never thought to protect their systems from internal attack, because conquered species never got access to their networks. Yuki smiled as she typed. She did not just steal information. She planted false data. She made supply convoys believe they were going to one location when they were actually heading into ambushes. She altered patrol routes. She even managed to inject corrupted code into some of their automated systems. The best part was when she discovered the Zekthor had neural implants. Every soldier was connected to a command network through devices in their brains. It was supposed to make them more efficient. Yuki saw a different opportunity. She began broadcasting into those implants. Images, sounds, messages. At first it was simple, just disturbing noises that made the aliens uncomfortable. Then it got worse. She sent them images of what humans did to captured Zekthor troops. She sent recordings of human laughter as they died fighting. She sent them nightmares directly into their sleeping brains. Zekthor soldiers began reporting psychological problems, paranoia, insomnia. Some refused to go on patrol. Others saw threats that were not there. The iron discipline of the Dominion began to crack under pressure they did not understand. Commander Vektal received the reports with growing alarm. His troops were becoming afraid, not of human weapons, but of humans themselves. They spoke in whispers about how humans did not fight fair, how they set traps within traps, how they used psychological warfare that broke the mind as well as the body. One report particularly disturbed him. A captured human had been brought for interrogation. The human was dying from wounds sustained in battle. Instead of begging for mercy, the human had laughed. When asked why he laughed, the human said, "Because we know where you come from now. We know where your families are, and when we are done with you here, we are coming for them." Then the human died, still smiling. Vektal ordered increased security on all facilities. He sent messages to the Dominion requesting additional troops. His reports changed in tone. No longer confident predictions of victory. Now they were requests for help. The Dominion Council was not pleased. 17 worlds had fallen before Earth. All had been conquered within months. Earth should have been the easiest because humans were so technologically inferior. Yet 3 months in, the Zekthor controlled only the ruins of cities while humans owned the shadows. In her bunker, General Hayes reviewed the latest intelligence. Attacks were up 40% this month. Zekthor casualties were rising. Supply lines were disrupted. Morale was falling. They were not winning yet, but they were not losing anymore either. She called a meeting with resistance leaders from around the world. Faces appeared on screens, men and women from every nation united by a single purpose. "We are hurting them," Sarah said. "But we need to hurt them more. We need to show them that invading Earth was the biggest mistake they ever made. I am authorizing Phase 2 operations." Phase 2 meant no more defensive fighting. It meant taking the battle to the enemy. It meant making them afraid to leave their bases. It meant showing the Zekthor what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the edge. Emma received the orders in London. Jin received them in Los Angeles. Yuki received them in Berlin. Thousands of resistance cells around the world received the same message. The time for survival was over. The time for revenge had begun. Commander Vektal did not know it yet, but his war was about to become much worse. The humans had spent 3 months learning. Now they were ready to teach. The Second Fleet arrived like a hammer from the darkness of space. Commander Vektal watched the ships emerge from faster-than-light travel and felt relief wash over him. 200 warships, 3 times the size of his original invasion force. The Dominion Council had grown impatient with the slow progress on Earth. They sent reinforcements with new orders. If humans would not surrender, they would be exterminated. Admiral Kreshitar commanded the Second Fleet from her massive dreadnought. The death of hope. She was older than Vektal, with scars across her gray skin from a dozen campaigns. She had no patience for prolonged occupation. When a species resisted, you did not waste time fighting shadows. You removed the species. "Begin planetary bombardment," she ordered. "Target population centers. Make them watch their world die," but the bombardment never came. Instead, Kreshitar received intelligence reports from Vektal about the resistance, about the ambushes, the hacked systems, the psychological warfare. She read them carefully and made a different decision. "Biological weapons," she announced to her officers. "Deploy them in every major population zone. The humans have shown they will not surrender to military force. They need to understand suffering on a level they cannot imagine." The canisters fell from orbit 3 days later. They opened in the atmosphere above cities, releasing clouds of engineered particles too small to see. The Zekthor called it the Weeping Death. It was designed specifically for humans, targeting their genetic structure. Those infected would suffer for weeks before dying. Fever, bleeding from every opening, organ failure, madness at the end. It was meant to be visible, horrible, and overwhelming. It was meant to break the human spirit completely. Dr. Sarah Chen worked in an underground medical facility in what remained of Colorado. She was once a bioengineer researching cancer treatments. Now she researched how to keep humans alive in a dying world. When the first patients arrived with symptoms of the Weeping Death, she knew immediately it was artificial. This was not a natural disease. This was a weapon. She gathered samples from the sick and began analysis. The pathogen was sophisticated, clearly designed by someone who understood human biology. But Sarah understood something the Zekthor did not. All biological weapons had weaknesses. They had to be specific enough to target humans, but stable enough to survive deployment. That specificity meant they relied on particular genetic markers. Sarah worked for 70 hours without sleep. Around her, people were dying. Her facility was filling with the infected. Screams echoed through the halls. Some of her fellow scientists became infected and had to be quarantined. But Sarah kept working because she saw something in the pathogen's structure, a vulnerability. The Zekthor weapon attacked human DNA at specific points, but that attack required the pathogen itself to have certain enzymes. Sarah could not cure the disease in time to save those already infected, but she could weaponize that vulnerability. She created a counteragent, not a cure, something else. Something that would use the pathogen's own mechanisms against its creators. It would be harmless to humans who were not infected, but to Zekthor, whose biology shared just enough similarity with the targeting mechanism, it would be lethal. "We are not going to defend," Sarah said to her team. "We are going to attack back." The modified pathogen was released through resistance networks. Humans who worked in Zekthor facilities spread it on surfaces. It was introduced into the aliens' water supplies. It was pumped into their air filtration systems. Within a week, Zekthor soldiers began falling sick. The symptoms were terrible. Their respiratory systems failed first, drowning them in fluids their own bodies produced. Then came the fever. So intense their gray skin turned dark purple. Finally, organ failure. The Zekthor had no immunity because they never thought they would be targeted by their own weapon. Admiral Kreshtar watched in horror as her troops died by the hundreds. Her medical staff had no cure. They did not even understand how humans had turned the bioweapon against them so quickly. She sent urgent messages to the Dominion demanding answers. None came. The Dominion had no answers. In their long history of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. But the humans were not finished. Yuki and the ghosts had been busy. Deep in their hidden server room, Yuki and her team stared at screens showing the complete architecture of Zekthor command networks. They had full access now. Every system, every ship, every communication channel. The Zekthor still did not know their networks were compromised. They were too focused on the biological attack. "It is time," Yuki said quietly. She activated a program they had spent weeks writing. It spread through Zekthor systems like wildfire. Automated defense systems turned on their operators. Ship navigation computers input random coordinates. Communications channels broadcast human psychological warfare 24 hours a day, directly into the neural implants of every Zekthor soldier. The broadcasts were carefully designed. Images of captured aliens being dissected while still alive. Recordings of human commanders discussing invasion plans of Zekthor territory. Maps showing the location of the Dominion homeworld with targets marked. And above it all, a message repeated in their language over and over. "You came to our home. Now we know where yours is. And we are coming." It was psychological warfare elevated to an art form. The Zekthor could not turn it off. The implants in their brains meant they could not escape the messages even when they slept. Some soldiers removed their own implants with whatever tools they could find, damaging their brains in the process. Others simply broke mentally, refusing to leave their ships or follow orders. Admiral Kreshtar tried to regain control, but command authority meant nothing when half her forces could not function. She sent encrypted orders to destroy communication systems if necessary. But the ghosts intercepted every message and sent back false acknowledgments. The Zekthor fleet began to fracture from within. On the ground, resistance fighters launched coordinated attacks on every major Zekthor position simultaneously. They had weapons now, good ones taken from the enemy or built in secret workshops. They had tactics learned from 3 months of constant warfare. Most importantly, they had fury. Emma's cell in London attacked the central command center at dawn. It was supposed to be the most secure facility in the region, guarded by hundreds of troops. But those troops were sick from the bioweapon, paranoid from the psychological warfare, and exhausted from constant ambushes. When Emma's team hit them with stolen plasma weapons and homemade explosives, the defenders broke. The facility fell in 2 hours. Emma stood in the command center where Zekthor officers had planned their occupation, and she smiled. It was a terrible smile. She activated the communication system and broadcast a message on all Zekthor frequencies. "This is London. We are taking our city back. Every city will follow. You brought hell to our world. Now let us show you what we learned from it." Similar messages came from Los Angeles, from Berlin, from Tokyo, from every occupied zone. The humans were not just fighting back anymore. They were winning. Commander Vektal stood in his command center and realized the truth. This was not a conquest gone wrong. This was a disaster. His forces were dying from their own bioweapon. His communications were compromised. His troops were mentally broken. The second fleet he had been so relieved to see was now trapped in orbit, too damaged by internal sabotage to effectively engage. He sent a message to Admiral Kreshtar. "We need to retreat, regroup, develop new strategies. The humans are not like other species. They adapt too quickly. They fight without honor or restraint. If we stay, they will destroy us." Kreshtar read the message and felt something she had never felt in her long military career. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. The Dominion had never failed to conquer a world. If they retreated from Earth, it would show every species in the galaxy that the Zekthor could be beaten. It would encourage rebellion across their empire. But if they stayed, they might lose everything. She made her decision. Pull all ground forces back to the ships. Maintain orbital position. We will bombard them from space where they cannot reach us. It was a sound strategy in theory, but she did not know that Jin Park and his team of engineers had been working on something special. They had captured a Zekthor shuttle intact. They reverse-engineered its propulsion system, and now in secret facilities around the world, they were building something the Zekthor never expected humans to have. Ships. Human ships. Crude and dangerous, built from scavenged parts and desperation, but ships that could reach orbit. The war was about to leave the ground, and the Zekthor were about to learn that humans did not know how to give up. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the hangar looking at the ship that would either save humanity or become his coffin. It was ugly. There was no other word for it. The hull was made from 3 different Zekthor shuttles welded together with human steel. The weapons were plasma cannons torn from destroyed alien drones and mounted on improvised turrets. The life support system was held together with hope and spare parts. She will fly, Jin Park said beside him. He looked exhausted. They all did. They had worked for 2 months straight, building 12 ships from captured technology and scavenged materials. The question is whether she will survive combat. Marcus touched the cold metal. He was a fighter pilot once, before the invasion. He had watched his entire squadron die in the first week of the war. Now he was 40 years old, too old for this, but he volunteered anyway. They needed people who understood aerial combat, even if this combat would happen in the vacuum of space. How many of us know how to fly these things? Marcus asked, counting you. 42 pilots total across all 12 ships, Jin replied. We trained you on simulators built from stolen Zekthor data. It is not ideal, but it is what we have. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Not ideal. That is one way to put it. We are going to attack a fleet of 200 warships with 12 ships built in. Secret bunkers by engineers who learned alien technology from instruction manuals written in a language they do not speak. Yes, Jin said simply. Do you want to reconsider? No. Marcus looked around at the other pilots preparing their ships. Some were former military. Others were civilians who learned to fly in the last 2 months. All of them were volunteers. All of them knew this was likely a one-way trip. When do we launch? 2 hours. General Hayes wants to coordinate with ground attacks to split their attention. Around the world, similar scenes played out. 12 ships, the entire space-capable fleet humanity had managed to build. It was laughable compared to the Zekthor forces in orbit. But humans had learned that you did not need superior forces to win. You needed surprise, desperation, and a willingness to do whatever it took. Admiral Kreshitar sat in her command chair watching Earth below. Her fleet had been in orbit for 2 weeks, bombarding human positions from a safe distance. Ground forces had been evacuated. Casualties had stopped climbing. This was how it should have been from the start. Fight from a position of strength. Do not engage the enemy where they were dangerous. Her tactical officer looked up from his console. Admiral, we are detecting unusual energy signatures from the surface. Multiple locations. What kind of signatures? Similar to our shuttle engines. But the power output is wrong. Much higher than it should be. Kreshitar felt her mandibles tighten. Impossible. Humans do not have spaceflight capability beyond primitive rockets. They cannot reach orbit with military ships. Nevertheless, sensors are detecting 12 objects rising from the surface. They are accelerating toward our position. On the main screen, 12 dots appeared, climbing through the atmosphere on trails of fire. They were small, barely visible against the planet below. Kreshitar stared at them in disbelief. The humans had built ships. In 6 months, while fighting a war, while dying from bioweapons while their world burned, they had somehow reverse-engineered Zekthor technology and built ships. All vessels, combat alert, she ordered. Destroy those ships before they reach orbit. 200 Zekthor warships turned their weapons toward the rising human vessels. The space around Earth lit up with weapons fire. But the human ships did not follow normal flight patterns. They jinked and weaved, using Earth's atmosphere for cover, emerging and diving back in unpredictably. Zekthor targeting computers struggled to lock on. Marcus felt his ship shake as near misses from alien weapons rocked the hull. His controls were sluggish, fighting against him. The ship wanted to tear itself apart from the forces it was never designed to handle, but he kept flying, kept dodging, kept climbing. Gold 2 is hit. Someone screamed over the radio. Marcus saw one of the human ships explode, torn apart by direct hits from a Zekthor cruiser. 11 ships left. Keep moving, he said into his radio, forcing his voice to stay calm. Do not give them clean shots. Remember the plan. The plan was insane. But everything about this war had been insane. The 12 ships were not meant to defeat the fleet. They could not. They were meant to get close enough to cause chaos. Marcus's ship broke through the upper atmosphere into the black of space. In front of him, the Zekthor fleet filled the void, massive warships bristling with weapons. His tiny, ugly, jury-rigged ship was an insect facing giants. He armed his weapons, such as they were, and dove toward the nearest enemy vessel. The Zekthor ship tried to track him, but Marcus was small and fast. He slipped under its main guns and raked the hull with plasma fire. His weapons did almost no damage against the thick armor, but that was not the point. He was a distraction. While the Zekthor focused on the human ships, they did not notice the other threat until too late. Ground-based weapons built in secret over months fired from the surface. Not conventional missiles, but modified Zekthor plasma cannons scaled up to massive size. They were crude and had limited ammunition, but they were powerful enough to hurt ships in low orbit. 3 Zekthor cruisers took direct hits and went silent, their systems overloaded. The fleet began to pull back to a higher orbit, away from the unexpected ground fire. That was when Marcus saw his opportunity. All ships target the command vessel, he ordered. Hit the Death of Hope with everything we have. It was suicide. The flagship was the most heavily defended ship in the fleet, surrounded by escorts and point defense systems. But Marcus had learned something in this war. Sometimes the only way forward was through. He pushed his engines to maximum and flew straight at the massive dreadnought. Behind him, the other surviving human ships followed. 9 ships left. They were ragged, damaged, running on empty fuel tanks and prayer. But they came anyway. The Death of Hope opened fire with everything it had. 2 more human ships exploded. 7 left. Marcus saw one pilot, a woman named Chen he had trained with, lose her entire ship except the command module. She kept flying toward the enemy with just her cockpit, firing her side weapon until another blast finally destroyed her. 6 ships left, and they reached the flagship. Marcus armed his last weapon, the one they had installed specifically for this moment. It was not elegant. It was a captured Zekthor reactor, damaged and unstable, rigged to overload on command. A bomb. It has been an honor, he said to the other pilots. Then he set his ship on collision course with the Death of Hope and armed the reactor. Admiral Kreshitar saw the small human ship accelerate toward her bridge. She ordered evasive maneuvers, but the Death of Hope was too massive to dodge quickly. She watched the human vessel impact against her command tower and wondered, in her last second, how the prey species had become the hunters. The explosion tore through the flagship's core. The reactor detonation started a chain reaction that ripped the massive ship in half. Debris and bodies spilled into space. Admiral Kreshitar died instantly, along with her entire command staff. The Zekthor fleet fell into chaos. 5 more human pilots followed Marcus's example, ramming their ships into targets before anyone could stop them. Cruisers exploded. A destroyer lost power and began drifting. The neat formation of the fleet dissolved into confusion. On Earth, General Hayes watched the tactical displays and felt tears on her face. They had lost all 12 ships, every pilot dead. But they had accomplished the impossible. The Zekthor fleet was broken, their admiral dead, their command structure shattered. Ground forces advance, she ordered. Take back our cities while they are in disarray. Resistance cells across the planet launched simultaneous attacks. Without orbital support and leadership, the Zekthor ground forces were overwhelmed. They had been beaten back step by step for months. Now they broke completely. Commander Vektal, the highest-ranking Zekthor officer left alive, watched his empire crumble around him. In 6 months, the humans had gone from defenseless prey to effective predators. They learned Zekthor technology, turned Zekthor weapons against them, and just destroyed a fleet with 12 homemade ships. He sent a transmission to the Dominion homeworld. Earth cannot be conquered. I request immediate retreat of all forces. If we stay, they will kill us all. But the humans were not done. As the Zekthor fleet limped toward the outer system, trying to regroup and escape, General Hayes made an announcement on all channels, including those the Zekthor could hear. You came to our home to conquer us. You failed. Now we know how to build ships. Now we know where you live. Consider this a warning. Leave Earth, leave our solar system, and pray we never find you, because if we come looking, we will not be asking for surrender. We will be delivering consequences. It was not an empty threat. The humans had captured enough technology and intelligence to know where the Zekthor came from. And they had proven they could adapt, build, and fight beyond all expectations. For the first time in the history of the Dominion, the Zekthor fled before an enemy. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, a Zekthor mining colony on the frozen moon of Krevdax IV sent its routine status report. The colony had 300 workers extracting rare minerals that powered Dominion ships. It was far from Earth, deep in Zekthor-controlled space, safe. The next day, the colony sent no report. Dominion Command tried to contact them. No response. They sent a scout ship to investigate. What the scout found was recorded on its systems before it too went silent. The footage showed devastation. The colony was destroyed. Not by bombardment, but by precise strikes on critical systems. Life support had been disabled first, freezing everyone inside. Then the fuel reserves were ignited, turning the facility into a massive funeral pyre. The scout ship's cameras captured one more thing before something hit it. Ships. Human ships. Dozens of them. Crude like the ones from Earth, but improved. Hunting in the darkness like a pack of wolves. The Galactic Council received an emergency session request from the Zekthor Dominion. It was unprecedented. The Dominion never asked for help. They were the ones who gave ultimatums. But now council chambers filled with representatives from 100 species. All of them watching the footage from Krevdax where Ambassador Elena Rodriguez represented Earth. She was young, only 35. But her eyes carried the weight of someone much older. She had lost her family in the first days of the invasion. She had spent 6 months fighting in the resistance. Now she spoke for humanity on the galactic stage. The Zekthor representative, a diplomat named Velmoth, stood before the council. His gray skin looked pale. His voice, usually strong and commanding, shook slightly. The human species is conducting acts of terrorism across Dominion space. They attack civilian colonies without warning. They ignore all conventions of warfare. They must be stopped before this spreads. Elena listened patiently. When he finished, she stood and activated her own footage. The council watched in silence as images played across the main screen. Cities on Earth burning during the invasion. Bodies stacked in streets. Children dead in the rubble. The bioweapon victims suffering in the final stages of the weeping death. Zekthor troops executing surrendering civilians. You speak of terrorism, Elena said, her voice cold and clear. Let me tell you about terrorism. You came to my world without warning. You killed 3 billion people in the first month. You deployed biological weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. You bombed hospitals and schools. And when we fought back, when we refused to die quietly like the 16 species before us, you call us terrorists. Velmoth started to respond, but Elena cut him off. No, you do not get to speak now. You had your chance to speak when you sent your demands for surrender. You had your chance when you invaded. Now it is our turn. She walked to the center of the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from other species. The Zekthor Dominion has conquered 17 worlds. 17 species enslaved or destroyed. How many of you knew? How many of you watched and did nothing because you were not the ones being invaded? How many of you stayed silent because it was easier than getting involved? The chamber remained quiet. Elena continued. We learned something during our war. We learned that nobody was coming to save us. No galactic fleet. No peacekeepers, no heroes. Just us alone fighting for our right to exist. So we did what we had to do. We learned. We adapted. We became what we needed to become to survive. She turned back to Velmoth. You want us to stop our attacks? Then meet our terms. Complete withdrawal from all Zekthor-occupied territories. Not just Earth, all 17 worlds. Return sovereignty to every species you conquered. War crime tribunals for your leadership. Reparations to be paid over the next 50 years. And most importantly, verification that you dismantle your invasion fleets. Velmoth's mandibles clicked in anger. Those terms are unacceptable. You are one species. We are an empire spanning dozens of systems. You cannot dictate terms to us, Elena smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Can we not? Let me tell you what we have been doing for the last 6 months while you thought we were licking our wounds. We built a fleet. Not 12 ships this time. 300 ships and counting. We reverse-engineered every piece of technology you left behind. We know how your weapons work. how your shields function, how your faster-than-light drives operate. We even improved on some of them. She pulled up tactical displays showing human ships in formations, running drills, preparing. We also made contact with the species you conquered, the ones still suffering under your rule. We have been teaching them what we learned. How to fight back, how to resist, how to make occupation so costly that it is not worth the effort. Rebellions are spreading across your empire. Around the chamber, representatives began whispering. The implications were clear. The Dominion was not just losing Earth, they were losing control everywhere. You brought hell to our world, Elena said. You wanted to teach us our place in the cosmos. Congratulations, you taught us. You taught us that the strong prey on the weak. You taught us that mercy is seen as weakness. You taught us that the only way to survive is to be too dangerous to attack. We learned those lessons very well. She activated one more display. It showed star maps with routes marked in red, leading from human-controlled space to the Dominion homeworld. We know where you come from. We know where your families live. We know where your government sits. We have the ships to reach you, and unlike you, we will not send warnings first. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Elena raised her hand for silence. But we are not you. We do not want extermination. We want justice. Accept our terms and we will stop our attacks. Refuse and we will show you what it means when humans stop playing defense and start playing offense. Your choice. Belmoth stood silent. He knew, as did everyone in the chamber, that Elena was not bluffing. Earth had proven capable of the impossible once. They could do it again. The Dominion Council debated for 3 weeks. Reports kept coming in of human attacks on military outposts, of rebellions on occupied worlds, of their empire fracturing. Finally, they sent their response. They accepted the terms, all of them. The withdrawal took 6 months. Zekthor forces pulled back from every occupied territory. Subject species regained their freedom. War crime tribunals began. The first to be tried was Commander Vektal, the one who led the original invasion of Earth. Vektal stood in chains before a tribunal of judges from multiple species. They asked him why the Dominion invaded Earth. He looked tired, defeated, old. Because we could, he said. Because every other species submitted or died. Because we thought humans were weak. And now? The lead judge asked. Now I understand, Vektal said quietly. We brought them war. We thought it would break them. Instead, it forged them into something we had never encountered. We brought them hell. They studied it, learned from it, and delivered something worse. They delivered consequences. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Others received similar or harsher sentences. The Zekthor Dominion, once a feared empire, became a cautionary tale across the galaxy. On Earth, humanity rebuilt. Cities rose from the ruins. Population slowly recovered. But they never forgot. The defense fleets remained on high alert. Shipyards continued producing new vessels. Training academies taught the next generation how to fight. General Sarah Hayes stood on a platform overlooking a memorial, built for those who died in the war. 3 billion names carved in stone, including those of the 12 pilots who gave their lives in the Battle of Earth. Marcus Webb's name was at the top, along with his final words recorded from his ship's black box. A young cadet approached her. General, do you think they will come back? The Zekthor or someone else? Sarah looked up at the stars. Human ships patrolled there now, watching, waiting. Maybe, she said. The galaxy is a dangerous place. But if they do, they will find us ready. We learned our lesson too. Never again will humanity be unprepared. Never again will we be easy prey. The cadet nodded and returned to his duties. Sarah remained at the memorial, remembering the cost of their survival. 3 billion dead, countless wounded. A world forever changed. But they had survived, more than survived. They had won. In the Galactic Council, Earth's seat was no longer empty. Ambassador Elena attended every session, representing humanity with quiet authority. Other species watched the humans carefully now, some with respect, some with fear, all with a new understanding. The prey species that everyone ignored had become something else. They had become survivors, warriors, protectors of their own. They had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones who had nothing left to lose. Across the galaxy, in 100 different languages, a new saying emerged. When someone was about to make a terrible mistake, about to attack something they should not, people would warn them. Do not wake the humans. Do not make them fight, because if you do, you will not face soldiers or warriors. You will face survivors who learn to turn hell itself into a weapon. The Zekthor Dominion learned that lesson at a terrible cost. They brought hell to Earth expecting submission. Instead, humanity delivered consequences. And the galaxy would never forget. The war was over. Humanity had won. But more importantly, humanity had announced to the cosmos that Earth was not a target. It was a warning. Touch us and we will not just defend ourselves.